All right, hello, and we are on the air for the February 2015 Jekyll Townhall. We've got a bunch of people here today. We got Parker, as always, Jordan, also as always, Martin, Christopher, and Alfred. We're going to be talking about Jekyll 3.0 for the most part, and also additional services that we can offer for the rest of the community for submitting bug reports and stuff like that. So I think the first thing we could talk about is Jordan, give us a quick update, please, on the Discourse server.
Discourse is going up sometime tonight once we sort out the SMTP. Me and Parker are going to work on it in a little bit to figure out where we're going to host SMTP. If we can't get it set up on Mailgun rather quickly, then we will simply just go with my servers and get it up tonight. So it should be up sometime tonight and available for everybody tomorrow. This is non-SSL though. We still have to get an SSL certificate.
All right, sounds good. So the server itself is going to be up, and just going to have to secure it a little bit later.
It's already up and it's already been secured. I've just been too lazy to finally just kick it on. And finally Parker got a hold of me yesterday, and I said I would get it up today before we did the call.
Gotcha. All right, well, it's good to see that progress. Up next, I think we can talk about some of the progress that we've made on Jekyll 3.0
Just
over the last month,
so,
right?
real quick, just before we move on,
Go ahead.
we're interested in having sort of a single moderator or a team of moderators for the Discourse site, excuse me. Someone who's able to make sure that questions are answered, or at least that individuals are finding answers and communicating, and you're not posting terrible things or whatever. So if anyone is interested in that, please let me know. Would love to have community members sort of ensuring that the quality of the discourse is, no pun intended, is relatively high. So let me know.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, and I imagine whenever we finally go live with that, we'll be posting an issue on the GitHub repo with links and stuff like that, and probably also updating all of the website stuff as well. Okay, so with that, we can move on, I guess, to some of the progress that we've made on Jekyll 3.0 over the last month. Who wants to start with that stuff?
We've made some really great progress so far. There are only a couple more things I think that we're looking to accomplish. There's some we're going to release early this week, probably another beta. So there's been Jekyll 3.0 beta 1. We'll release a second beta sometime early this week. There are some bugs with incremental regeneration that we're interested in hammering out. So for anyone watching this who is interested, please do test out that new beta when it comes out, either tomorrow or Tuesday. So yeah, just sort of fine-tuning some of the internals is really all that's left, as well as hooks.
All right, cool. So check out the beta. I know I will whenever it goes live. See how my website, how it runs on the new stuff. I don't know. I get the feeling that this one's going to be kind of quick. Like, is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about? I don't really have anything right now.
Well, I don't know how much of the mini-test stuff I did landed inside of the current stuff, but there's a little bit with mini-test that needs to be done, as well as finishing up the switch over to the other stuff that we talked about last time and stuff like that. But
I did upgrade. I had a pull request the other day, earlier this week, I think, and I think I merged it where we upgraded to mini test from test unit. Seems to run a little bit better. There's one test that I asked Alfred to look into that sort of fails intermittently. But other than that, it seems to be awesome. It seems to all be working. There's a question 3492. Thanks, Alfred. There seems to be a little bit of confusion around active support. I have no idea why we have active support. Excuse me, active support in our gem file in the system at all. There's no real reason for us to have it at this point. So just last pieces with that. We may use it in a test. So we'll have to figure out how to deal with that.
As far as my testing was concerned, when I stripped it out, there was nothing that actually started failing. It can actually just be stripped out right now. There was no big deal of just taking it out of the gem file, updating the gem file, and going along your way. Now, once you finish implementing mini tests, there are another few tests that keep randomly failing for me on my local system, which also seem to randomly fail on Travis. If you look at, I don't remember if I had a dedicated branch for that. But there were a lot of tests that just would randomly fail, and I don't know if that had to do with the incremental regeneration or not.
I think maybe it's the incremental. Um, there were definitely a few things with that. Like it couldn't handle all the cases. There was also some other tests with like I think coffee script or something on Travis that I saw. I'm not sure if those had to do with that at all. Just a few spaces and whatnot. I think for the active support, I saw a ticket or a PR on it, and it was there were some failing tests on that, so we should probably look into that when they try to remove it.
Well, since Parker got all the mini test stuff merged in pretty much and converted over, like I said, I don't know how much of the stuff that I did in that thing landed in there, so I don't know the state of it since I didn't look at that pull request at all. I did notice some things looked familiar to what I did, but I didn't know if he pulled it all. But once I've gone through and looked at the state, we can just start rewriting those files uniquely, because there were a lot of problems with those tests to begin with. I mean, there were plenty of superfluous tests that just didn't make any sense, and tests that I discovered that just were doing nothing. They're like the Symlink test is like, hey, what's this doing? It's not actually testing anything. It's always passing. So we can start rewriting those files uniquely and pointing out those problems now that all that's done.
Yeah, let's definitely make sure that the tests remain robust and are made better for Jekyll 3.0. Something that we ought to do and should have done from the start is ensure that we have a much better test coverage, and that our tests themselves are not only covering the methods but also logically accurate. Like you said, there are some tests that I saw the other day, some of which I admittedly wrote late at night or very early in the morning when I wasn't fully paying attention, and that just don't really do anything. So, yeah, so we have some work to do. Yeah.
I mean, if people just want my honest opinion, you know, based on the past and having to do these big rewrites of testings, I just don't think we can get it done for Jekyll 3. I think this is going to have to be a goal for Jekyll 4. We can get some of it done, but I really don't think we can rewrite that whole suite in time for Jekyll 3 unless we've got a couple of months to do it in.
We definitely don't have a couple months. I'd like to get Jekyll 3 out by the end of March, probably, at the latest. So we don't have that much time. So maybe we have to push it off, but we can make incremental improvements, especially as we move. So there's that rewrite where we remove posts and pages as separate classes and move to a document-based solution, such that document is our individual class that represents a piece of user's code, or a piece of user's content, rather. So we'll be able to improve the tests just sort of organically by that rewrite.
Well, I do think some of the suites need a full rewrite. The main suites that need a full rewrite are some of the older suites that are really old. Like I said, the Symlink one, I'd have to go back and track it down again. I marked it locally in my branch. Mm-hmm. But it just seemed to have, when I would edge it out, it still passed, and that really irked me because that was an important security piece that wasn't passing. So yeah, I think some pieces
mentioned have to just rewrite. Totally. And you had mentioned moving many of the security tests into a separate file so that at least anyone that runs Jekyll, both Layer Vault and GitHub, can see where we're testing in terms of various vulnerabilities and ensuring that that we're not leaving too many gaping holes. So I do have two other things that I'm interested in talking about. One, I'm interested in hearing from, I guess, everyone watching, the community, and you guys, what we should do. So we have this Discourse site coming out, but what we should do to enhance the community itself. How you'd like to communicate with each other, what sort of content you'd like to see, say, on our Twitter feed, or we're interested in launching a newsletter, sort of what you're interested, how you're interested in engaging with Jekyll and engaging with the static site generator sort of community. We haven't done. We did the one live event, or the one meetup, which wasn't super successful, I will say. It was also not well advertised. I will also say. So part of that is that as well. But I've had the Cloud Cannon guys reach out to me and indicate that they're interested in hosting a sort of static site generator conference in San Francisco. So maybe we can be a part of that along with the other static site generators. Of course, it's a singular solution, just with different modes of turning your content into the output. So I'm interested in getting ideas about how to engage with the community and how you're interested in learning more about Jekyll, in understanding the concepts, advanced pieces of Jekyll, as well as sort of best practices, and how we can improve our documentation and all of this. So
yeah, that sounds really cool. Also really interesting. I mean, I don't know how many of the members of the community live in the San Francisco area or are going to be going to that conference. And I also don't know anything about that conference, whether or not like they're going to be like having talks and like sessions and stuff like that. If it's any other conference, I imagine it will. I mean, what would be really cool is if people were to be giving talks specifically about Jekyll, and then being able to record those and like, put them out for the rest of the world to see, because the best practices are not. I don't think there are any like officially documented best practices around Jekyll. It's all kind of. It's not really
anarchy.
guesswork, but it. Yeah, exactly. It's anarchy. But it would be really cool to see something like that. Just to see something like that be at a conference. I wasn't going to say like a high tier conference because I guess it's like a brand new thing, but any conference in general would be cool to have that.
yeah, absolutely. And there's like HTML5 DevConf, also in San Francisco,
Sure.
where individuals where if you're interested in speaking about Jekyll, of course let us know. We'd love to help you with your presentation or whatever. But there are sort of other avenues of talking about static sites as well. But Mike from Cloud Cannon had only sort of mentioned it to me. They were interested in setting up a conference. They hadn't set up a date or they hadn't figured out when it was going to be, but they were just interested in it. So
Right.
We have no idea whether or not that's going to actually happen. But I agree, having talks would be great.
There was also a really cool. I mean, Martin, you're the one who posted this. I would be. I mean, I'd love to hear more about what you guys are doing. At your school and what kind of stuff you guys are engaging with over there. Like, is it part of your coursework? Like, to what capacity are you using Jekyll in that?
Exactly. So basically, we had to choose from a whole bunch of GitHub projects. It was like all popular projects on GitHub, and we chose Jekyll. I worked a bit with Jekyll before, and I really liked it. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do Jekyll. And,
so are you working with more the like the Ruby piece of it or the HTML web dev piece of it?
The Ruby piece.
Okay.
So really, we try to basically map the software architecture and actually give a chapter in a book made by students then, which describes all kinds of open source projects. So we really want to what we're busy with right now is mapping all the stakeholders, which is quite hard to do actually, but because I don't know exactly how your teams are set up. So sometimes it mentions you see like at Jekyll/core or at Jekyll, but they're not viewable from the outside. So to find the outside structure, especially with Ben Balter and Joel Glovier, like to see how they affect the Jekyll project is some like there's also a question then. For example, you heard that in Jekyll version 2.4 that was mostly used on GitHub right now instead of the current version. Do you have any feedback of why that is, or is it just a lack of updating with the current version because, laziness, or is it really like there's a specific decision to do?
I think Parker can answer this the best, but I think mainly one of the good security practices for a lot of people to take advantage of, I guess, nowadays, because how software iterates so quickly, is to kind of stay a couple versions behind what's current, because that one's most tested, most proven to be highly secure. but I'm sure Parker has some more details on specifics.
Yeah, I mean they don't upgrade very quickly because Jekyll is not a huge. I mean it's not GitHub.com. It's not something that they make money from, so it's not a huge priority for the security team to look over every piece of code that changed, and they basically look at a big diff of the entire project and ensure and all of the subcomponents that have changed as well. So they have to go through every gem that's been updated, and they have to go through Jekyll itself to ensure that nothing bad has happened. So it's a pretty considerable amount of work.
Right.
And because I'm interested in releasing Jekyll 3 soon, they contacted me and they said, should we ask, should the security team look into 2.5.3 or should they wait until 3.0? And I said, it's at this point you've waited so long already, may as well just wait for 3, which will be out soon anyway. So they can start looking at the code earlier than later. And ensure that they have that. But in terms of, I mean, we don't really have set teams except for the core team. We have a Windows team that I ask about changes, especially regarding the file system. Windows always has interesting quirks around the file system and around shelling out to other processes as well. So there's a Jekyll Windows team, there's a Jekyll GitHub Pages team, and that's Ben and Garin Turikian, Vijay Turikian, and Joel Glovier. And then there's a Jekyll Help team. So
Okay.
all 4 of those teams sort of work together to ensure that we have the best quality software and the happiest community.
Okay. And how do you communicate together? Like, is it purely these GitHub meetings and GitHub issues, or is there also something like behind the scenes?
The core team uses a Slack instance. We have a Slack room, or a Slack instance. I guess we have various channels, and everything else is done on GitHub. We try to be as transparent as possible, such that everyone can be a part of the conversations. When that isn't important, for example, when Jordan and I are working on this Discourse site, then it's just the 2 of us, and we just sort of chat over, Google Hangouts or whatever. So it's ad hoc, mostly ad hoc. It's not set up in any particular way.
There have been a lot of times when I will message Parker and I'll ask him about something and he'll just say make a GitHub issue about it because he'd like to talk about it in the open instead of in a Google Hangout chat.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time to visit GitHub.com to do all that, so it's just easier for me to talk over Google Talk for most of this stuff.
Yep, and I spend most of my free time checking the GitHub issues. So it's sort of in my best interest to ensure that everything's centralized. But I'm happy to coordinate elsewhere as well. Coordination is largely on GitHub, almost entirely on GitHub, and a little bit on Slack, and a little bit on other chat platforms.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, and Martin, one thing, if I could, speaking as somebody who's used the product for a while, mostly my contribution now, I guess you could say, is sort of as a documentation nerd looking at the website, thinking about potential features. I have one of the things that I have still open was actually just a general branch on grammar and other little stupid changes that I would want to see, just to say we want to make this as clear for people to understand, just so you can get in and use the product. I know it's something Parker talked about a lot for 3.0, that we want to simplify things as much as we can, and part of that is giving people good documentation so they can just dive in. So that's sort of where I sit. Of course, when I'm not asking Parker silly questions, but that doesn't happen too often. So
Yeah, true. I think a lot of the documentation questions are also for Liquid, actually. A bunch of people get stuck with Liquid.
Yeah, that was one thing actually I had opened up a issue, because I know we talked about it last time. I wasn't actually sitting here for that call, but just sort of what the next iteration of those docs might look like. If you guys have any ideas, let me know and I'll scratch something out. I just wanted to bring it up here before I really dive in.
There's a pull request on Shopify/Liquid, the GitHub repository. A guy, Tetsuro, is recreating the Liquid documentation It's sort of been a night project, night and weekend project for him. He's not doing it. He works at Shopify. He's not doing it during the day, so he hasn't made a huge amount of progress. But he's sort of set up the design.
All right.
Have to at this point add content. So if you want to dive in, go check over in that pull request and start submitting content to that pull request, and we can have everything documented. That will be, I think, liquidmarkup.org or liquidmarkup.com.
Okay. Was that the one that you copied into that same issue, or was there a separate one? I didn't see that.
I'm not remembering which issue exactly you're referring to, but it's likely that I did. It's likely that I did.
Sure. Cool.
So we just to close that sort of out. The idea is to empower, or the idea is to have Liquid document itself, and then to document our extensions of Liquid. So as much as I would love to document every software product that we use, because documentation is great, it's sort of a waste of much of our energies to document something that they can deal with themselves. So helping Liquid document Liquid is where I'm trying to put our energies, direct our energies as much as possible, and document our extensions of Liquid, like our sort filter and etc. So.
Okay, perfect. Do you have like basically something like a task list or something like that? And I don't mean the open issues directly, but more for testing. So I just heard that you want to do a lot of testing, and basically we're a team of 4 people. So I would say we maybe can like get ready and really contribute to the project and write some tests. So how do you think we best approach that in the sense of like what should we try to test first and how should we go through that?
It'd be great if Jordan had mentioned some tests that he thought were flaky or bad or etc. So it'd be great, Jordan, if you have time, 5-10 minutes, whatever, just to sort of list out the various files that you saw as terrible. That'd be great. And then you guys can start there. Take each of those files, walk through it, understand what it's trying to test, ensure that it's encapsulated, that it does what it's supposed to do.
If you really want a list of files, just start with *//test.rb. I'm not lying here that a lot of the tests had some problem in some way, shape, or form.
We do definitely need a full audit of our test system just to ensure that everything is logically correct and everything is contributing well to our to our test infrastructure. I had considered moving over to RSpec. I think it's a little bit more friendly than Test Unit.
Yeah.
Though I do appreciate that Test Unit is pure Ruby and that RSpec has this interesting DSL, but it might offer us, moving to RSpec might offer us an interesting window into where the tests, because you have to convert everything, right? So you have to read every test, you have to change every test. So that might offer some interesting.
Well, if you want to give the testing a really quick jump on getting everything done and getting everything fixed, the easiest thing that you could do is split out everything that's duplicated across all the files and put those into helpers. For example, we have a lot of stuff going on with incremental regeneration that is constantly duplicated. We're constantly regenerating the site, where we could put all of this duplication and building the site in the start and all this into a class of its own that's encapsulated. And at that point, once we've encapsulated all of this stuff that's going on, it'll be a ton easier to go back and either convert it to RSpec or just rewrite all of the mini-test tests. But with all this lack of encapsulation, rewriting the test requires us to go through and think about the encapsulation and then go through and figure out what's duplicated, what's not, and it becomes chaos because you just end up rewriting what's in that file and you never get around to encapsulating it because it's too hard to figure out what needs to be encapsulated.
That was a sentence, all right.
Cool.
Do you have any other questions, Martin?
Just looking for some, but yeah. So basically, the old question is, how do you think GitHub really affects your project? Like GitHub pages.
GitHub as a company, or GitHub as like a as a tool to get stuff done.
As a company, so as GitHub pages.
As basically a user of Jekyll, you mean?
Basically, as a user of Jekyll, yeah, because it has this like double role. Because GitHub, of course, only uses Jekyll to build the site, so they don't really care that much directly about the usage of Markdown. That's more to the GitHub users, for example. But the actual building, yeah. So, have you received like direct feedback from GitHub as how they would like to see differences in Jekyll regarding the build process, or like the building of the website, or no? Like, because I would guess that they really want to optimize everything, of course, because they have to do this like not once, like an author has to do it, like to preview their website, but they have to do like, I don't know, millions of times.
Yeah, I mean they're running Jekyll quite a lot, and luckily their infrastructure offers them pretty much every build is less than 4 seconds, so they're actually not spending too much time. But you're right, it takes up a lot of server time, a lot of server resources. But the two things that they've really done in terms of pushing Jekyll in a certain direction is they've made me really security conscious, and they've driven the product to such a place, or at least helped guide it in such a direction where we don't make significant changes, and that every change is a deprecation rather than a removal. So if we want to remove a feature, say we want to get rid of excerpts, we have to ensure that that's a deprecation. We have to ensure that there's enough warning. Terrible when you write, and then two months later you go and you edit a page. You're just using the GitHub.com interface, so you're not testing it locally on the latest version of Jekyll, and they've upgraded, and you push a change, and all of a sudden your entire site breaks. So being very wary about sites breaking and reducing breaking changes, as well as ensuring that our tool is as secure as possible for them, such that there isn't arbitrary file reading or file writing, etc., so that you can't access their systems, you can't access other sites. For example, private sites are built with GitHub pages as well. So those two things, I think, primarily, but maybe other top ideas.
Okay.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about, just touch on for 1 second, is Docker, with respect to building an entire like self-enclosed web server with all your Jekyll content inside of a Docker container. I've done some work on this, and it works pretty well. I don't know if I'm actually pretty sure that we don't want to make it official, because it's kind of a pain to maintain, I imagine, and I don't want to be the only one working on it, and I bet you I probably would be. But it's something that I've been working on in my spare time, and I'm going to be finally publishing the second part of a blog post that talks about how to do that and getting it up and running on kind of any container infrastructure you've got. And it runs the site in an Nginx server basically after it gets done compiling everything. So just keep an eye out for that if you're interested in Docker stuff.
Troy, let's add that to the resources page of the documentation as well.
Okay.
So that can be sort of a definitive guide to ensuring the security of your build and serve process.
Yeah, and a thing crossed my mind. Yeah, I know. She's about to attack me. Something that crossed my mind, but probably wouldn't work out too well, is that, I mean, I was thinking that maybe GitHub could use those containers to host websites, and that way they could be less security conscious, because it would all be. But they probably wouldn't want to do that.
I think they already do run it in a Docker instance.
Yeah.
I really have no idea how they got it going.
Yeah, they build all their sites in Docker, but it's not. Docker is not secure enough for them at this point, so they're just really not interested in leaking any information.
Hey, these are security guys. That's their job to be secure about stuff. So.
Well, from what I understand, Docker was never built specifically for security, just isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
I can't blame them for being worried that something could break out. So
Yeah, that's fair. It was just a fleeting thought. Anyway, um, is there any other are there any other questions that you had, Martin? I just had to get that out real quick because I mean we're running up on the time. We've hit 30 minutes. And it's usually the time that I like to call it quits, unless you guys have other stuff that you want to talk about.
No, not directly. Not right now. Like, I need to talk with my team next time before and prepare some questions for this because yeah, no, this was really fast. Like, I'm gonna join 5 a.m. here. Let's
Yeah.
get let's get going.
You're not even awake yet, man. I can tell. It's I feel sorry for you, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, feel free to come up with a list of whatever it is you want to talk about and chuck it into a new GitHub issues. I really like to do more.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. What I do have to say is actually I never looked at Ruby before, like all kinds of other programming languages, but not Ruby yet. So actually, I really liked it. I really liked browsing through your code base because it was really intuitive. So, like, thumbs up for what I saw there. Like, seriously, it's easily browsable. Like the nightmares I've seen right now. Yeah, it's really well actually. So yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the main tenets when it comes to like successful open source projects in general, right? Is they have to be intuitive when it comes to new people taking a look at the code base. If it doesn't make any sense to people who are taking a look at it, then no one's going to contribute to it, and that's completely counterproductive to the open source idea, right?
Yeah, you said it.
I would like to mention just before we are done that I'm also interested in looking into other ways to distribute Jekyll. Vagrant has done a wonderful job of distributing packages such that it has its own Ruby, it has its own dependencies already built, such that you aren't worried about, oh, did I install the Ruby headers? Do I need this and that? So we can just sort of give you Ruby 2.2 with Jekyll and everything sort of works. So I'm also looking into ways to distribute Jekyll in a much easier way. So you don't have to install RVM and then install a version of Ruby, then install Jekyll, and then debug all of these C extension compilation problems. So let me know if there's something in particular you'd like in that package. All of the plugins would have to be bundled there. So all of the GitHub Pages plugins will be, of course. But if there are any external plugins you're interested in as well. We'll try to do that.
To be honest, to do that for Debian or Ubuntu is not a big deal. At least for me, I could throw it into our build system and build out all those gems. Because Debian has tools built for doing that kind of thing, converting gems into packages. And then putting them onto a PPA is no big deal either. But that only solves one problem. I don't know how to build RPMs.
All right. Well, so, yeah, let's look into it then.
That sounds actually really cool, because that's one of the main things that not me personally, I mean, it's not a problem for me, but like when other people, because like, one of the things about Jekyll is that it allows content creators, let's say, within a company who aren't necessarily technically savvy, pretty much a really easy way to add new content. But the thing is that if they can't get the website up and running on their own machine, then they're going to just give up and call you anyways. That's a true story. So having something like that would make life way easier for us supporters of websites that we want to branch out, expand the content curation to.
Well, I know I pushed back from actually trying to get it submitted into Debian itself into their own repos, mostly because Debian is slow as hell, especially the Debian Ruby team. No offense to them, they can't be expected to keep up as quickly as we program. But, if we did a PPA of ourselves or we hosted our own repo or something like that and hosted our own debs, I wouldn't push back from that. I'd be happy to put that up because my build system can do that automatically within a few hours anyways.
I mean, that would be pretty dope, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing that a lot of people would use, but it would be definitely worth looking into for sure.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Jordan. It's all right.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, well, I know a lot of the people that I work with would prefer that type of thing For example, a current client of mine only likes to use RPMs and debs, and when we deploy stuff to our own servers, even though our build system is building out everything, we always deploy as a deb because it's easier to roll back our system with the deb. I understand people are using all these fancy tools like Chef and Knife or Chef with knives and Solo and all this crap, but we're still old school. We're still pushing out debs and we're still deploying those debs. So I know a lot of people that would be down for that kind of thing.
I mean, a lot of what this sounds like, at least to me, is, you're talking about sort of taking everything into one package that people can just get. I mean, I guess going back to, GitHub's use of Jekyll to serve pages, that, maybe there are other people who want to use it who have users who are at least technically savvy enough to get it up and running. Obviously, I don't know how big that audience is, but, I think that's definitely a direction to go in, and like you guys are saying, if the work is there, I think we should go for it.
Well, it won't be one single package that they're getting. It'll be multiple packages because every gem needs to be its own package inside of Debian repo. That's just the way that's just the way that I've learned, at least from the outside, that they do packages. For example, you would end up with lib Jekyll Ruby or whatever they name them out. I haven't actually followed Debian Ruby for a long time, but if I remember right, they do split out everything into an individual package. But still, that's not a big deal because they have tools that do that.
Right. I was actually thinking about an entirely encapsulated package, such that you download a tar, a gzip tar, and you get this archive, and you unzip it, and you put it in opt Jekyll, and you symlink, user for the Linux users at least, symlink, user local bin Jekyll, and then to opt Jekyll bin Jekyll or whatever, and then you just run Jekyll, and you have it available, and it uses that precompiled Ruby, and you aren't worried about any possible issues. I think on Linux it's generally easier to, and if you're using Linux, you're going to understand how the command line works, and the reason that I was interested in these packaging systems is because I'm interested in content creators, like Troy was saying, that are non-technical or that are less technical, that are interested in using Jekyll for their success, and can open up the command line, but once they run into the first issue with installing Ruby or installing a gem or a C extension or whatever, then they've hit a roadblock that they can't get over by themselves. So by saving them all of that work and saying, here, take this thing, put it somewhere, here, take this thing, and then it's like a .pkg file that automatically installs itself into the right place, automatically symlinks everything by itself, then we're saving them a lot of work. And that would especially be nice for Windows and for Mac that run into more problems, I think, than Linux does. I think once you install, Ruby dev, the dev headers in Ruby in Linux, then you're pretty much golden. You can just run gem install Jekyll and everything works generally.
Well,
so I'm actually interested in having this be packaged as a single package with all the dependencies, Ruby itself, Jekyll inside, for non-technical users. But I do see the benefit of building special packages, Debian packages, deb packages within an RPM for.
Well, if we wanted to go
RPMs.
that route, then what I would recommend we do is go with FPM. FPM at least for Linux distros, because with FPM, then I can build out a shell script that just does it and puts it all inside of opt, modifies the shebangs for everything to use that encapsulated Ruby. And at that point, we're golden, and we could tell FPM to just build it as a deb and then build it as an RPM. Then we go back and sign it with our packaging keys for the deb, and we have it signed with our packaging keys for the RPM, and then we put it into a repo. And it's encapsulated inside of itself, inside of an opt directory. That's really easy to do. But if we wanted to remain technical for people like, people who know how to use apt to install things, we probably want to stick with the way that Debian does things. And I'd have to go back and read the packaging docs again. But
Right.
I do think that we still need to, at least if we're going to do a deb, do it right.
Totally. So I wasn't even considering a deb for the packaging system that I was interested in. Just a precompiled archive file that you unzip, you throw into a particular directory, you move it to wherever you want it, and then you symlink. And sort of that was the installation process on a tech-savvy device, And then for a non-tech savvy device, or non-tech savvy person at least, not as tech savvy person, using a system like a PKG file with the installer, such that it sort of does it automatically. But I can see the benefit as well. So is gem install not reliable on? Is that why you're interested in this, Jordan? Is gem install not reliable on Debian?
I honestly, I don't use Debian's Ruby, and it's not that I don't think Debian's Ruby is good. It's just that, like I said, they're slow at updating, and I can't expect them or force them to update. And if I
Right.
really wanted to make it a problem, it's my job to go in and try and help them. I just don't have the time to try and help them. So rather than complaining to them, I just use my own Ruby.
Cool.
So,
Okay.
but as far as the deb is concerned, the reason I recommend a deb for even technical and non-technical users is because a technical user can just go dpackage.si and install it, and a non-technical user can just double-click and install it with Ubuntu Software Center, which suits both. But not only that, we can solve the problem with the symlinking that folder over to user bin and making it readily available by using the alternative system from a deb and then rolling it back once they uninstall it. So we're making everything cleaner and more automatic. So instead of making a mess where they have to go back and figure out why the hell Jekyll's not working, why is there still a link inside of user bin, we've already removed that link using the alternative system. So I
Right.
just think, if we're going to do it, we have to do it in a way that makes it as clean as possible, because if people are like me, they're going to get angry as hell if something is left behind on their system, and they're going to start bitching at somebody, and that's exactly what I don't want.
Exactly. All right. Cool. Let's look into that then, for sure.
I think that's a really good idea with precompiled, because some people really I've seen also here at the university actually when trying to use Jekyll, even they're like, what, I have to install like Ruby, and they're within no time they're like, yeah, no, forget it, like just simply setting it up. So I think like a precompiled version would actually really help the community in that sense. Like, to be
I
like,
think
okay, it will just work, Like, you can just run it. It's an Jekyll. You can just run it. Done. That would be like really great.
I
Yeah.
think we could one up that really quickly too by just doing an old school Docker style where we have a bash script that does everything from start to finish on a system for you, and then go ahead and do the debs later.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that would just be a vagrant up, basically, and you've got a new box that should be able to do all your Jekyll stuff for you.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about? All right, doesn't sound like it. Well, we're gonna wrap this thing up then. If you have anything you want to talk to us about, feel free. Open up an issue on GitHub, and as always, we're more than willing to help out. Talk to you again next week or next month. I mean, bye guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Later.
Bye.